Previously on Higurashi when they cry Kai, Chapter 8.
俺が山犬のおからぎだ。
そりゃよかったな。給料いくら？
At that moment, Akasaka's eyes opened wide.
いいか、無事でよかったのです。なんとかね、奇跡のおかげで。奇跡じゃありませんです。みんなで力を合わせたから、その中の一人の若坂が助けに来てくれただけのことなのですよ。ああ、そうね。この程度で奇跡じゃもったいないわね。
茶化しっこなしです。
I don't mean to tease you.
あなたの思い人というのはサトシ君のことですね。
さあ、どうでしょうね。今頃どこにいるやら。生きてるのか死んでるのかもわかりませんけど。
生きています。
He is?
え？
上は誰だい？
知らないわ。私と接触するエージェントは野村と名乗ってるけど、私も素性はよく知らないわ。
でも手を組む相手に足ると思う程度には話をしたんだろう。
数度ね、おしゃべりをしただけよ。今にして思うと私を利用したいという魂胆が見え見えだった。でもなぜかあの時は彼女だけが私のことを理解してくれるってそう思ったのよ。
わかるよ。君に誰かの助けが必要な時期があったことは知っている。その時君のそばにいるのが僕でありたかった。
そうね。そこにいたのが二郎さんだったらどんなに良かったことか。
行くぞ、山犬の総力戦だ。こいつがしくじればうちらは積まれてゲームオーバーだ。
その通りよ。もう後がない。私も出て陣頭指揮を取るわ。富武はここに置いていっても大丈夫？
大丈夫ですんね。完全武装の保安隊員が8人もおりますんね。その倍の完全武装兵が来てもしのげます。それよりも問題なのはあの空手野郎です。奴を侮ることはできませんぜ。
ゴッホですわ。何事もなくゴッホを無事に歩けたらあなたの勝利ということでいいですわよ。
ほほう、それは大した自信じゃねえか。もし俺がゴッホ何もなく歩けたらどうするつもりだ？
そうですわね。私の敗北を認めて降参して差し上げてもよろしくってよ。私今日は最高にトラップ能が絶好調ですの。あなたをゴホで絡め取ってご覧に入れますわ。
クソガキやら。
違う降伏する。撃つな。
何いつまでちゃかひけらかしてんだこら。殺されてえか煽りさい。てめえとは築いてきた屍の山の高さが違うんじゃボケ。
すんません。勘弁してください。
They dropped their guns voluntarily and got on the floor with their hands on their heads. Even Shion couldn't believe what just happened. There were several of them, and all had been amply armed. Kasai had a weapon too, but it was his presence that defeated them.
絶対です。命を懸けてもいい。私は絶対にサトシ君をひなみ沢へ連れ帰ります。この入江京介が絶対というのです。そしてサトシ君も帰ってこようとしている。互いが手を伸ばし合って届かぬわけがない。だからシオンさん、私を信じてその日まで待ってください。絶対 絶対この入江京介が彼を連れ帰ります。
And so it continues. Greetings, my name is Neosekken, and welcome back to my Let's Play of Higurashi when Ch.8 Chapter 8. So, I'm feeling quite good. We got Tomitaki, we got Satoshi, and we basically are giving the Mountain Dogs one hell of a bad day. Unfortunately, it doesn't look like I can say the same for Takano here, although given what's going on, I can't really fault her. Anywho, what seems to be the problem right now, Miss Takano? Takano didn't have enough stamina to walk around in the mountains. She was running out of breath, but even so, she continued to scream at the Mountain Dogs on the radio. Screaming at the Mountain Dogs while traversing terrain that you're not physically used to traversing is a really good idea if you want to run out of oxygen really quick. Just saying. She wasn't using an intercom like the Mountain Dogs were. Instead, she was using the communication unit on the back of one of the dogs, so he constantly had to listen to her yelling. I almost feel bad for this poor bastard. Almost.
どいつもこいつも頼りないったらありゃしない。それでも特殊部隊なの？天下の山犬はどうしたというのよ。
Takano bit her lower lip and squeezed her left arm with her nails. Her arms had nail marks all over them. She was holding her grandfather's research scrapbook in her left hand. Even Takano didn't even know why she was holding it. Maybe she grabbed it unconsciously because she wanted her grandfather to comfort her. The Mountain Dogs had already suffered devastating damage. They had to walk around in an area they weren't familiar with, and they wasted their energy on the multitude of traps that had been set. Although they were as tough as can be, they were getting exhausted.
うちの酸素にゃ
ウグイス1よりウグイス13用心しろ。お前の左翼が沈黙した。今度はお前が狙われるぞ。
ふざけるなよ。なんだってんだよ。俺かよ、畜生。
To answer your question, maybe it's because, well, you're aiding and abetting territorial genocide. That's probably why God is not exactly smiling down on you right now. Food for thought. He panicked. The same thing kept happening. His team members had been going down one at a time, starting from the left flank. And he was next. Oh no! Not you! Anything but Nightingale 13! Did that mean the enemy was coming from his 9 o'clock? No, those demons didn't think normally. On this mountain, being aware 360 degrees around yourself wasn't enough. Even being cautious of the ground below your feet and sky above your head wasn't enough. Sounds to me like you need a sixth sense. Where are they fucking coming from? Those bastards! Come here, come the fuck at me! I'd be careful with that wish if I were you. Nightingale 13 held his taser in front of him as he looked around timidly. This taser could have been a powerful weapon, but it was far more effectively used indoors. On this mountain, it was almost worthless. Nightingale 13 heard a noise behind him from a bush. He thought he saw something, so he fired his taser. The electrodes flew out into the bush. Did he imagine it? He felt a tug on his taser. The cord from the taser was stuck in the bush, and he couldn't rewind it. If it wasn't useless before, it had certainly become that way. That's why you gotta be absolutely sure of what you're firing at before firing a taser. Otherwise, you're gonna leave yourself wide open. And you're supposed to be a special forces officer. How disappointing. Then he heard a noise behind him again, and this time he saw someone coming at him. But his weapon was useless. The newcomer growled at him. Here comes the horn dog! That was all it took. Because he was so scared, he didn't think. That was exactly what Satoko expected. Satoko, who was up in the tree, dropped a metal bucket on his head. Please tell me it was filled with bricks. It landed perfectly. That was an awful lot to say with just a simple cry. The bucket had some drawings on it. What were they? They were drawings of strange unknown creatures. They somehow resembled those strange characters you see on educational TV programs. As Reina jumped down from another bush, she hit the bucket with a stick. No, maybe it should be described as a strike, instead of a hit. The man flew backwards. Keiichi was ready for him. The stance he was in looked a bit like... That's it! He looked like a batter in a batter's box! He was on one foot. That was a legendary one-foot swing, created by that one famous world-famous baseball player. Which one? There were several. Destructive force can't be measured from just one direction. It's a function of both speeds added together. Both Keiichi's strike and the speed of his opponent create a truly amazing destructive force. With an exhilarating and magnificent sound, the Mound Dog flew into the air in the opposite direction. Tumbling down a hill, I hope. Then he rolled down on the ground and stopped. There, Rika waited him. Hey, look! It's your lucky day! R is right in front of you! It was almost as though they calculated that he would end up there. Rika patted the bucket happily. This comforting moment for Nightingale 13 only lasted for a second. Mion shot her taser at his butt. Nightingale 13 jerked for a moment, then went limp. You are gonna have a tough time sitting down for a while. Shame I don't really feel bad for you. You sure you got time for that? There could be more around the corner. Keiichi and Rina jumped on him and tied his hands behind his back with wire. Hanyu and Satoko high-fived. While Keiichi and Rina tied Nightingale 13 up, Rika tried to sense something in the air. Is that your radar noise? Scared targets are the best kind. Rika reported to Mion. She was a bit like a radar. Mion didn't even care about the guy they had just knocked out. She was already trying to figure out their next move while looking at Satoko's map and using the info Rika gave her. Everyone eagerly awaited Mion's next order.
まだまだ食い足りないって。確かにね。我が部としちゃようやく体が温まってきた程度だしね。行っちまう？
By all means.
この山でみんなやっちまうか。
Mion was a great leader. She had both leadership skills and tactical ability. But more than anything else, she was great at encouraging people's spirits. There are no cowardly soldiers under a brave general. And brave soldiers fight like a million men under Mion's command. Nobody could stop Mion and her club members. Both Mion and Okinogi's original estimates were too low. Now Okinogi was thinking something else. Before they started the siege, he likened one of them to a well-trained platoon. But that didn't fit anymore. They were on par with an elite armored division. Foot soldiers couldn't beat an armored division. What Okinogi had was just a company. There was the air support, or a bombardment from a warship, or an artillery base? Where was, excuse me. Okinogi needs someone to pump the mountain full of holes. If he couldn't have that, he needed a submarine to fire a nuclear weapon. Now come on, that's just excessive. If he couldn't have that, he wanted to retreat. Well, I certainly wouldn't object to that last one. Okinogi no longer doubted it. The enemy commander was a genius. Under a mighty commander, all soldiers become heroes. He wanted to see the face of the commander, or at least he wanted to know their name. But then Okinogi remembered that demons used to live in Hinamizawa. He also realized the commander had to be a demon.
ウグイス13沈黙。オードリ4沈黙。こちらひばり10。子供の笑い声が聞こえる。包囲された。頼む、助けてくれ。ひばり10、退却しろ、退却しろ。退却ってどっちにだよ。
I wish I could see what just happened. I'm sure it would have been beautiful.
大鳥ないんだ。敵の一人を発見、追跡している。応援を送ってくれ。大鳥ない。どこにいるんだ。所在地がわからない。周辺の状況を送られたし。霧が出てる。
A fog, huh?
ここは河原。大鳥ない。地図上ありえない。落ち着いて状況を確認しろ。そんな河原の向こうに死んだ姉ちゃんが。
Well, look what you guys done. Now he's hallucinating. You broke this poor man. I mean, yeah, I would have liked it. I mean, yeah, I was perfectly okay with the idea of you breaking him physically, but mentally? Okay, you know what? I don't care if you break him mentally either. Who the fuck am I kidding?
大鳥ない。大鳥ない。応答しろ。大鳥ない。沈黙。無理だ。奴らはこの山の鬼だ。俺は知ってる。これは鬼隠しなんだ。
If only.
俺たちは全員この山で消されちまうんだ。
If only.
バカなことを口走るのはやめろ。各班長は採点庫で状況把握と指揮公用に努めろ。敵は悪魔なんかじゃない。ただのクソガキだ。ビビるな。格の違いを見せてやれ。
That is the most dignified and somewhat evil-sounding laugh I've heard the horn dog make ever.
聞こえる。誰？俺じゃない。俺じゃない。
クマだ。
Does Hanyu look like a bear to you? She isn't even built like one.
大鳥3だ。ここには野生のクマがいるのか。聞いていない。大鳥1。一度撤退し、下記の武装の決闘を。バカ言うんじゃねえ。いくら矢口三家だって野生のクマがいるはずねえだろう。連中のハったりだ。 乗せられるな。
人の身に過ぎたるを知らぬ愚かなる人間たちよ、汚すことを許されぬ聖地を踏み荒らす罪を知るがいい。我に感謝せよ。聖地を汚した罪をあがなう機会を与えしことを感謝せよ。
誰かのインカムを奪ってやがるんだ。敵の指揮減退戦術に乗るな。
I am just loving every minute of this.
恐れを知ることかなわぬ哀れな人間どもよ。よかろう。汝らがその身でしか知ることができないというなら、我がそれを教えよう。
ウグイスワンだ。光栄が来ていない。バカな、どこへ行った。応答しろ。
哀れなウグイスが一羽踏み込むこと許されぬ地に迷い込む。そんなにも知りたいか。鬼の世を知りたいか。告げよ、人の世に別れよ。我が忠告に耳を貸さぬ具を今より知れ。
誰の悲鳴だ今のは。ウグイス、剣を取れ。
またやられた。誰が沈黙した。それより本部、俺の左肩には誰かいるんだよな。俺は孤立してるんじゃないよな。
まだ聞きたいか。痛みを伴う声が。
なんだよ今の音。何がひしゃげたらあんな音になるんだよ。
俺、昔電車の飛び込みを見たことある。
Well, that's terrible.
あの時と同じだ。全身がひしゃげる音だ。
That's what a human body being crushed sounds like to you? Sounds to me like you need to have your ears examined.
やだ、そんな死に方ごめんだ。死にたくねえ。死にたくねえ。やめてくれ、山の神様。
God helps those who help themselves, Phoenix 4.
俺も好きでやってるわけじゃねえんだ。給料もらってやってるだけなんだ。
So if you were to get paid a big enough paycheck, you'd be perfectly okay with slaughtering an entire continent full of people? Just curious.
ウグイスワンより本部。ダメだ。士気の高揚は困難。隊員の脱落と士気低下は深刻。これ以上の戦線維持は困難。損害が増えるだけだ。
だから落ち着け、ウグイスワン。他の隊員は野戦の素人ばかりじゃねえか。お前はあの地獄の卒業生だろうが、そのお前が混乱してどうするんだ。落ち着け、お前が範を示せ。
I think you could afford to set a better example yourself right now, Okanogi. You seem a bit rattled yourself.
本部、ウグイスワンが応答しない。そんな、あの人がやられるなんて。ダメだ、やっぱり悪魔だ。
No, you're all just weak.
ダメだ。くそ、敵は心理戦までこなしやがるのか。ガキどものくせにプロの不正規戦部隊に指揮減退戦術まで仕掛けやがるというのか。
I don't know. If even they can win against you, you don't really... Then that tells me you're not as professional as you think you are. Unless you count sucking and failing in life in general to be a profession, in which case, well, I'd give you all a gold star. Radios are usually helpful communication tools. But in this case, they backfired. The club members took an intercom from a mountain dog they knocked out and used it to corner the other members psychologically. It worked even more effectively because they were in enemy territory and were unfamiliar with the terrain. The best solution would be to make everyone stop using the intercom but that would give the enemy more chances to attack them individually. I would seriously consider retreating at this point. You're just in a fight that you just can't win. But you're not about to do that, are you? Okanoki was growing fearful of the club members, as he still hadn't grasped their true identities. However, Takano still hadn't recognized how serious the situation was. Well, that's to all your detriment then. She kept yelling at the mountain dogs to get their act together. Okanogi could tell she was exactly the type of commander who only commanded to attack and let her men die. But Takano's reckless orders were working in a way. Although the club members were winning, their area of operation was getting smaller. The club members were trying to lure their enemies to one trap area after another. In other words, they were defeating the mountain dogs by allowing them to come into their territory. The mountain dogs were about to be annihilated, but the curtains were closing on the club members' theater too. Okanogi realized his enemies were trying to finish this battle in a hurry. If the mountain dogs fell back, everything they'd done would be for nothing. He didn't want to, but he had to follow the princess's order. Okanogi figured he was finally about to get his enemies. Well, I guess then it's just a simple matter of figuring out who's going to outlast who. Hanyu and Keiichi continued to act over the commandeered radio.
羽生ちゃんすごいよ。本当の神様みたいだった。
っていうかすごいね羽生。あのドスは波の人間にはちょいと無理だよ。
Joke's on you, she is a real god. Or at least depending on how you look at it. But I mean, she is. Who am I kidding?
それを言ったらケイイチもすごいのです。鶏の首を絞めたみたいなすごい悲鳴を出してましたです。
Well, it helps that Keiichi is a chicken.
こんなのケイイチさんには朝飯前ですわよ。何しろ我が部の通り名は口先の魔術師でございますもの。
And here I was hoping you would agree with me, Satoko.
へへへ。相手が人で耳がついてる限り、誰だろうと俺様のケイイチマジックで思いのままに操ってやるぜ。
You should become a voice actor. I bet you'd be famous. Only Nipa gets voiced in this thing. The censorship of this thing just doesn't... I just can't understand it sometimes. Unless this was something that the modders decided to add in.
私は高野よ。あんたたちの最上位の上司よ。聞きなさい。鬼もいないし神様もいないわ。もしいるなら戦いなさい。神などその座から引きずり下ろしてやるのよ。ヒバリとウグイスは合流して戦力を立て直しなさい。大鳥は白鷺の残存と合流。敵は山頂付近栄林署の資材小屋あたりを本拠地にしている模様。交渉を取られてる。こちらの動きが筒抜けのはず。奇襲はあって当たり前よ。差し違えてでも倒しなさい。
サンサ、武装に戻る許可を。奴らを制圧するにはペーサーでは無理です。
許可できるわけないでしょう。私たちは今奴らを完全に包囲して追い詰めているのよ。ここで引けば取り逃がすわよ。私たちはあいつらの首に両手をかけてる。あとは締めるだけなのよ。
At the same time, Okanoki received another radio call. Using that line meant his caller didn't want Takano to hear the conversation. Okanogi understood the meaning of that, so he walked away from Takano and answered quietly.
指揮者より大鳥は緊急事態です。診療所研究区画が周辺エントランス区画への侵入者警報を受信しましたが、すぐに解除されました。 ご報示の手続きによらない解除です。状況の確認を求めていますが無線に応じません。現在研究区画の武装保安隊も含め全員が沈黙しています。
Okunogi understood everything. He had been fooled. He suspected a diversion, but he never even thought that the heavily armed security unit of the Mountain Dogs could be bested. If the enemies were soldiers in camouflage, then he wouldn't have been fooled. He underestimated them because he thought they were kids. But now he really understood. He understood the reason why no adults had showed up in this battle on the mountain.
わかった。そいつは東京の格好に伝えたか？
まだです。連絡しますか？
連絡しろ。富武は奪還され脱出。村境で封鎖線を張らせてるが、武装保安隊を秒殺した連中だ。RPG 一機では難しいだろう。
封鎖線に応援を送りますか？
バカ。そんな余剰人員があったらお姫様が突撃させてるぜ。今手が空いてるのはむしろお前くらいだ。封鎖線に連絡。車両の強行突破に備えろと伝えろ。
了解。
了解。警戒を厳にする。各自聞け。診療所が襲撃され捕虜を奪われたとの連絡が入った。敵はおそらく車両にて強行突破を試みるものと思われる。
RPG を準備。他は一斉射撃で蜂の巣にしろ。射殺許可は出ているぞ。
One of the Mountain Dogs nodded and opened a narrow case in the trunk of a van. In that case was a powerful anti-tank weapon, designated RPG-7. This was a weapon that many said changed the history of modern warfare. After all, this terrifying weapon had a firing range over several hundred meters, and was capable of burying most tanks in existence. The dawn of this weapon meant that we were now in an age where a lone foot soldier possessed the firepower to destroy a tank. It was capable of reshaping the history of warfare. That was the RPG-7. Well, wait till you see drones get invented. Each of the other 4 members had an MP5, the weapon used to destroy the tire on Irie's car. There was no question that the blockade team was well armed. They waited in the van until the enemy vehicle showed up. Once they saw a suspicious vehicle, they were planning to stop it by moving into the middle of the road. They intended to destroy that vehicle by firing all at once. I just thought of something. If Tomotaki and Akasaka's group can commandeer a second vehicle, maybe they can find a way to make it speed along into the blockade team's path and have them fire at the decoy vehicle, and then once they expend all their RPG ammo, then bulldoze what's left of the blockade team with their primary vehicle, and then get the hell out of Dodge and into Okinomiya. Since they already know that the blockade team is likely that there's going to be a blockade team, that's what I would do. Set up a diversion, I mean. They all watched very carefully for suspicious vehicles coming from Hinamizawa. This was the only road that connected Hinamizawa to Okinomiya. It would take more than half a day to get there if they used a different route. Their blockade was where the gravel road changed to a paved road. It was what people called the village border, and was their last chance to stop anyone from leaving. Hinamizawa was at a higher elevation from that point, so the vehicle would be coming downhill. They were probably expecting a barricade, as well as heavy resistance from the Mountain Dogs. If they wanted to pass this point, the only way would be by force. They could start a gunfight, but that would take too much time. Since they didn't want to waste any, they should avoid unnecessary conflict. Grumble. Someone's stomach growled, but nobody made fun of it. Ha ha! Well, I just did. That was understandable. Since all the members were getting ready for a battle, nobody even wanted to laugh. They looked at the clock. It was almost noon. Of course they'd be getting hungry. At that time, they heard a noise coming from the direction of Hinamizawa. Please tell me it's some kind of decoy vehicle. Or a giant boulder rolling downhill into the blockade team. Something. Obviously the car was going very fast. The van moved to the middle of the road and simply stopped there. Some of them hid behind the van, and some hid in bushes on the side of the road. They pointed their guns at the suspicious vehicle coming towards them. The car must have been going very fast. But this was a straight road. No matter how fast it was going, it couldn't escape. That car happened to belong to Kasai. The shine black paint and the sound of the engine made clear it was a very nice car. Nicer than anything you'll ever drive. The RPG-7 fires unguided rockets. Therefore, hitting a quickly moving target is extremely difficult. In this case, however, their target was straight ahead. If the car tried to swerve suddenly, it'd flip. If that was the case, it wasn't necessary to shoot directly at it. Besides, according to what Kasai said, its power can easily flip a car without a direct hit. Even if there was only one chance to fire, the Mountain Dogs were definitely in an advantageous position.
富武さん、不審なワゴンが路上を封鎖してます。伏せてください。注意して。向こうのワゴンの鼻先に当てるようにするんだ。分かってます。一度経験してますので、コツは分かってますよ。
Did you do this when the other side was using RPGs, Akasaka? The Mountain Dogs aimed at the vehicle. It was coming right for them.
まだまだ引き寄せろ。距離100未満まで引き寄せろ。
分かってる。即挙してろ。
The Mountain Dogs in the bushes laid in wait, ready to fire. Don't you mean lied in wait? The rocket on the tip glinted eerily, like it was waiting for its prey.
距離200、150、攻撃用意。
The soldier put his finger on the trigger of the RPG-7.
赤坂さん、衝撃に備えてください。
距離100。
What happened? Didn't the RPG-7 fire? That was when the one measuring the distance next to the shooter noticed something. The shooter's shoulder had been hit, and he was tumbling to the ground.
スナイパー。銃声はなかった。距離400以上だ。そんなのどうでもいい。撃て撃て。
Only their regular guns could stop the car now. And I bet you that the car they're driving is bulletproof. The other Mountain Dogs fired all at once. But immediately they realized something. The car had been hit by hail bullets at close range. Any normal car would have been on fire in short order. But there was nothing. This wasn't a normal car.
そりゃそうです。その崎で御用達のゴールデンリムジンですから。葛西 RPG を観測手が拾った。撃たせるな。
この距離で外すと。
Shion and Kasai were far beyond that straight road. They were in the enemy's blind spot on the other side of the hill, on top of an abandoned car. Shion was on her knees, checking Mountain Dogs' movements with a pair of military-grade, high-powered binoculars. Kasai was lying on top of the car with a sniper rifle in his hands. Shion figured this would be where the mountain dogs would place their ambush. So the only way for them to beat the dogs was to snipe at them. Well, I mean, I'll certainly admit this much. This is a hell of a lot more practical than getting a decoy vehicle to go in first. Both Shion and Kasai took sniping lessons in the US during the dam conflict. Kasai was now aiming at the man who picked up the RPG and was trying to take position with it. Again, the RPG wasn't fired and was down on the ground. The two who tried to shoot were both groaning and clutching at their wounds. They were both shot in the shoulder. The wounds wouldn't kill them, but they definitely couldn't fire that rocket. Fire with your toes! The car had arrived. The mountain dog screamed and dove out of its way. Akasaka must have been used to driving in this kind of situation. He hit the nose of the van just right and broke through the blockade. Hell yeah! The van was hurled away and spun in a circle. As the mountain dogs tried to get back in the van, Shion and Kasai shot at them. The scope on a sniper rifle is one specifically made for sniping. Therefore, its field of vision is so narrow that the sniper is unable to see their surroundings well. That's why it's always necessary to pair up with a spotter. A spotter uses powerful binoculars to probe the situation and communicate information to the sniper. Snipers can't do their job alone. Their potential is unleashed only when paired up with a spotter equally as skilled. They try to stand up and climb into the van, but the ultra-velocity rifle bullets pin them down. The bullets rip through the air, traveling faster than the speed of sound. The noise those bullets created was nothing like the sound from a normal gun. It almost sounded like the Grim Reaper himself swinging down his scythe. Furthermore, they could see the mountain dogs, but the dogs couldn't see them. Only those who actually had experience being sniped at could understand this fear. There was a driver and one mountain dog in the van. They had to leave, otherwise it would be too late. The driver made a snap judgment and slammed on the gas pedal. Step on it! Shoot their tires! Tomotaki opened a window near one of the back seats and leaned out. Hot air blew into the car. Though the car was jolting up and down on the bumpy road, he checked the mechanism of his gun calmly. He did it naturally, as though examining his favorite camera. The gun had been taken from one of the security guards in the basement. One of the dogs in the van held the same gun in his hands. Their weapons were evenly matched. The road was no longer straight. It curved like a snake. Shoot them right as they are making a turn so they go careening into the forest. There were some bumps and sharp curves, which made things in the car fly all over. A gunfight in this situation would be extremely difficult. Tomotaki realized he'd run empty in no time if he wasted bullets, so instead of firing recklessly, he carefully waited for the right distance. And in doing so, tried to convince his enemy they were still out of range to make them close the gap. On the other hand, the mountain dog couldn't take it any longer. He fired, wasting his bullets on the bumpy road. Some of those bullets hit the body of Kasai's car, making a nasty metallic noise.
富武さん、身を乗り出していては危険です。大丈夫。あんな下手くそじゃ当たらないよ。僕の生徒だったらゼロからやり直しだな。このような状況下では動きを読むんだ。挙動を予測し、弾幕で予測射撃をするんだ。当てようと思わない。弾幕に突っ込ませるようにしてるんだ。こういう風にね。
Tomitaki fired for the first time, after cautiously waiting for the perfect moment. Those who understood guns would be fascinated at his shooting form. His stance was so firm he didn't lose control, even in the violent burst of shots. Yet there was no unnecessary tension, and just enough slack. Despite being in such an anomalous position as leaning out from a car, Tomitaki was shooting very precisely. It was nothing like what the mountain dogs did earlier. He shot at just the right time, so his bullet went where it was supposed to go. It was hard to believe that they were using the same gun. Nasty metallic sounds etched themselves into the body of the van, which made the mountain dogs realize just how good Tomitaki was.
あいつめちゃくちゃ射撃がうまいぞ。ただの東京のジム屋じゃねえのかよ。俺、噂に聞いたことあるんだ。富武に事故でジム屋に移ったらしいが、教官時代は不正規戦部隊の射撃教官だったと聞いたぞ。なんだよそれ。
He's saying you're outmatched, boy.
ってことはあいつ。
Tomitaki started to aim for the driver's seat to pressure them to give up. That's actually a good idea. Take out the driver. The mountain dogs could tell they were in a predicament. Tomitaki was capable of hitting his targets easily, even on such a bad road. Furthermore, they were in a bulletproof limousine, while the mountain dogs were in a regular van. The van of which, incidentally, was facing the limousine in pursuit. All of his shots had just been warning ones. Unless the mountain dogs called off the chase, Tomitaki would start shooting at them soon enough. I wouldn't even bother with warning shots at this point, considering everything that's happened so far. I'd just freaking straight up make real shots. They'd had no chance of winning. We win!
向こうは速度を落としてあれだけの銃撃戦をしてるのに全く平静なままですね。相当の爆発をお見受けします。訓練の賜物さ。
Tomitaki, having slid back into the car, raised his fist in victory. He was as easygoing as ever, even after a gunfight. Akasaka felt like he was finally getting to know Tomitaki for the first time.
富武にご無事でしたか。連絡が取れず心配しておりました。
Tomitaki was making a call from a telephone booth outside of Okinomiya. The phone lines around there were on a different network than the ones the mountain dogs had sabotaged. That was why he could make the call. Tomitaki had called Tokyo immediately. He told Tokyo that there were some spies from the mountain dogs within Tokyo's research division, which is how they found out where he was. He also told him that he was captured, but that he had escaped. He told him that they were fooled by the diversion, and that they were on the mountain as they spoke. While he was captured, Major Takano, the ringleader, had hinted at the existence of masterminds she was working for, etc. He explained everything that he had learned thus far.
入江機関の早急な鎮圧を
彼らはすでに地上での発砲を繰り返しており、このままでは村人に発覚するのも時間の問題です。番犬の緊急出動を強く要請します。
もしもし、調査部の岡だ。無事でよかった。番犬はすでにひなみ沢地区の南方30キロで空中待機してる。こちらも上層部に鎮圧命令を求めていたのだが、石頭どもが事なかれ主義で渋りやがってな。だが君が無事ならば話が早い。君の話はすぐにトップに説明する。許可はすぐ出るだろう。20分以内に番犬は到着する。つい今、高野三佐と小野木兄に逮捕命令が出たぞ。入江機関の即時制圧と山犬への武装解除命令も出た。君のおかげだぞ。でかした。
Hey, Takano. I win. Tomitaki walked out of the telephone box.
話はつきましたか？
ええ、番犬部隊が鎮圧に緊急出動するそうです。すでに近くに空中待機していて、20分ほどで吸収するそうです。
どの程度に強いんですか？その番犬という連中は。
山犬が機密保持のための多目的部隊だとしたら、番犬は戦闘のみに特化した精鋭部隊です。装備も人材も比べ物になりません。おそらくあっという間でしょうね。
Akasaka looked at his watch. It was about 12:30. The bloodhounds would arrive in about 20 minutes. Akasaka remembered how hungry he was. It was lunchtime already. If he was brave enough, he would head to a noodle shop, and by the time he was done, everything would have ended. For the mountain dogs, who fought well until the last possible moment, it was ending rather too soon. You know, thinking about it now, considering that it's Takano that we're dealing with, she likely won't give up till the bitter end, so maybe it's too soon for me to be claiming victory here. They were in an area where rice fields and a residential area mix. It was the border of Okinomiya. The sun was covered by a thin layer of silver clouds, and a cool breeze was blowing. It looked like it might even rain a little. The two of them couldn't even remember how many times their lives were threatened that day. They wanted nothing more than to let the rain soak their bodies. After a while, Akasaka spoke.
どうしますか、富武さん。
ん？どうするって何をね？
私、ひなみ沢へ戻ろうと思っています。まだみんな戦ってる。
そうだね。でもいいのかい？一度はくぐり抜けた視線だよ。
I got a promise to keep.
リカちゃんが待ってる。まだ約束は果たし終えていません。
Attaboy, Akasaka.
なら戻ろう。僕も用事があってね。
Takano?
ちょうど戻ろうと思ってたんだよ。赤坂さんはヘリの旅の経験はあるかい？乗せてもらえることになってるんだ。
They watched the breeze blowing over the rice fields for a while, then returned to the bullet-ridden car. The car started up quickly, and they drove it back the way it came. It was only noon. There was still plenty of time before the Watanagashi festival began. Clouds covered the sky, and it suddenly grew cool. It was going to rain a bit, according to Okanogi's intuition. He already knew their enemy had broken through the blockade, but he hadn't told Takano about it. By then, it really didn't make any difference if she knew or not. And he also wanted to reach the top of the mountain. Okanogi was only thinking about one thing. He was thinking about the enemy's commander, who made the day so horrible for him. He just couldn't accept his defeat until he saw the enemy's commander face to face. The battle was already lost. They just had a princess who didn't think they had yet. With the rest of the mountain dogs fallen to the traps and ambushes, Okanogi had ordered all units, except his own, to fall back from the front line and into the vehicles. The only ones left to go on were the very determined princess, Okanogi himself, and a handful of exhausted members of the mountain dogs who could barely walk. Eventually, the slope became a little more gentle. Okanogi and his companions finally arrived at the storage shack of the Forest Service. The club members were already aware that the mountain dogs had been almost totally annihilated. Both the numbers and strength of the dogs had fallen far below that of the club members. Therefore, when Okanogi saw his opponents lined up there to welcome them, he wasn't surprised. It was all the kids who'd driven the mountain dogs to destruction that entire day. They had also fought with everything they had. Though they overwhelmed us from start to finish, they had used up all their stamina and were on their last legs as well. Still, their willpower kept them standing. A will born of the victor's honor, which God granted only to the winners.
いたわ。あるよ、おころぎ、捕らえさせなさい。
サンサ、よくもこんなざまの我々をこき使えるもんです。
何？私に逆らう気なの？
まさか逆らう気なんか最初からありませんやね。
Okanogi removed his communication unit, his taser, and all the heavy equipment he had been carrying. Then he unbuttoned his shirt and told his men to stay put as he stepped forward. He strode forward about half of the distance toward the club members.
山犬の大鳥ワンことおこのぎだ。お前らのリーダーに敬意を表する。名前を聞かせてくれ。
The club members looked at each other. One of them was a girl taller than the others. She couldn't be that old, but her hawk-like eyes were as sharp as a veteran soldier's. Okanogi didn't know her circumstances, but only those whose lives were threatened on a daily basis had eyes like that.
部長、園崎美音。
The girl stepped forward.
いくつだ？いや、年齢なんてどうでもいい。朝からの沖宮署での騒ぎからこの山での戦いまで、すべてお前の指揮なのか？
The girl didn't answer, but her silence confirmed it more strongly than anything she could have said.
この戦はお前らの勝ちだ。まだ負けてねえと思ってるのはうちのお姫様だけさ。もう今さらどうにもならねえ。富武は封鎖線を突破。沖宮にすでに到着して東京に連絡を取っただろう。鎮圧部隊がいつここにやってくるか知らねえが、それも時間の問題だ。笑いたきゃ笑え。爪ってやつさ。
はあ。
何をやってるの？その女は敵のリーダーよ。倒しなさい。
お姫様が何か言ってるが気にするな。
望みは何？
お前も大将、俺も大将だ。わかるな。
あいつ降参したんじゃないのか？
No.
レナにはわかる。あの人は今日敵の指揮をしていたんだよ。そして部下がみんなやられた。だから「はいそうですか」って言って 負けを認めるわけにはいかないの。
我が身を犠牲にしてしか敗軍の将は見そげないというのですか。
いいよ。あんたが納得するようにすればいい。
感謝するぜ。
Mion took a stance. Okanogi took a stance too. Although Okanogi was nothing like Akasaka, he was still a close combat specialist. Even when exhausted, there was no way Mion could defeat him. Takano thought so too. She thought Mion was underestimating Okanogi, but Mion knew. She knew that she was the only one who could put him at ease.
行くぜ。
Okanogi, readied, launched sharp from his waist, but Mion deflected it to the side with her elbow, wrapped her arms around underneath it, wrenching it back behind him, and forced it up into a hold. And then she twisted his arm even further. Okanogi was certain she was going to snap a bone. It was an excellent technique. She took his arm in one flowing motion. It was clear that Mion's self-defense techniques were in spur of the moment. Go, Mion! However, she didn't break Okanogi's arm, but instead threw him onto the ground. I would have broke his arm. She didn't deliver the final blow, but rather chose to look down on him.
やるな。
岡木、何やってるの？早く制圧しなさい。
うるせえ！黙ってみて！こいつは大将戦だ。
Okanogi got up quickly, took a stance once again, and swung his arm down. But Mion avoided it effortlessly, and just like she did before, she grabbed his arm and turned it around. They were in the same position as before. And just like what happened then, she didn't break his arm, but threw him onto the ground and looked down on him.
回転投げか。当て身を入れねえところを見ると実戦向きじゃねえな。むしろお上品に演舞を見せる流派ってとこか。ちなみに腕を決めた時、下がる相手の顔面に膝が入れられるぜ。
そうなんだ。今度試してみるよ。
Please do.
ミオンってすげえ。向こうの隊長と互角に渡り合ってるぞ。
岡木、武器を使いなさい。何をやってるの？
行くぞ！
He had a stronger drive this time. He tried to kick right through her from a step and a half away. Yet this time Mion stepped in to launch her own attack, jumping right towards the foot, trying to hard to kick her. Mion kept herself low as she entered close range of Okanogi, shutting out his leg, trying to kick her. So of course, he went right after her head. Okanogi raised his right arm to elbow her in the skull, but this time Mion rose up, using both hands to keep his arm from swinging down. Unlike the flowing motions from earlier, this was simply a contest of strength. His physique was overwhelmingly superior to hers, so she couldn't win that test of strength. But suddenly, Mion let go, and allowed Okanogi's elbow to come down. Then she stepped to the side. Aha, it's another repeat of before! Okanogi's arm was held to his back, and he ended up in the same position. What came after was different. A knee to the face, I hope. Okanogi's face lowered as Mion lifted his arm up high, and then she swiftly brought her knee into his face. Yes, good girl. It was exactly the technique that Okanogi told her about just earlier. And once again, he was down on the ground.
そうだ。飲み込みが早いじゃねえか。 戦略、戦術、そして戦闘、すべて三拍子揃ってるぜ。おめえみてえなやつが俺の役をやるべきなんだよ。山犬みてえなクソどもの隊長をな。
ごめんだね。あんたらみたいなネクラそうな秘密部隊の隊長なんて。
Mion scoffed. Okanogi took a smile, too. He wasn't trying to be humble. It was just his pure reaction.
そうだな。お前ほどの器なら日本の不正規戦部隊長なんてもったいないぜ。サスでもデルタでもスペツナズでもどこでも最高の人材になれるだろうぜ。何しろ
サス？デルタフォース？くだらないね。そんな退屈なところじゃ私を飼いならせやしないよ。
そうだろうな。そうだろうよ。なら聞かせてくれ。お前ほどのやつなら何の隊長を望む？
隊長なんて興味ないね。部長でいいね。
部長、英国情報部アトムか。妥当だな。
ダメダメダメ、なってないね。私がやりたい部長はたった一つ。南沢分校の若部の部長だけさ。罰ゲームのない戦いなんてごめんだね。口先の魔術師前原圭一、怪異モードの竜宮レナ、トラップ使いの里子に燃え落としのリカちゃん、そして期待の新人フルで羽生。これだけ揃ってなけりゃ世界のどこだろうと退屈だね。
勝てねえ。勝てねえよ。こんなやつが隊長だったんじゃ勝てるわけねえよね。
しっかりなさい。
You know, Takano, you got a pistol of your own, right? If you're really frustrated of him going about the way he's going about things, you could just take matters into your own hands. Although I suppose it's better for me that you conveniently forget that you have a pistol of your own. Takano yelled at him, but Okanogi didn't hear it.
これでウォーミングアップはいいだろう。次の一撃でぶち抜いてやるぜ。当たったら死ぬぞ。覚悟しな。
キナ、あんたに似合いの最後をくれてやるよ。あんたが欲しいと思ってる決定的な最後をくれてやるよ。
よく言ってくれた。よく言ってくれたぜ。
Okanogi took about 5 steps backwards and breathed deep. His body twisted as he gathered all his spirit into his right fist. Just as he said, this next attack would be for real. He was putting everything he had into this one final blow. Mion narrowed her eyes, prepared to parry the blow to her with her side. The sky began to stir. They both felt raindrops on their foreheads.
行くぜ。殺すからな。殺しに来いよ。
あんたのお祈りが済んだらいつでも来な。
That one tense moment was suddenly brought to an end. He dashed forward from a low position, just like a runner from a starting line. Then he added the twist from his body into the blow, as his right arm roared with all his power. Oh, man! He dashed forward from a low position, just like a runner from a starting line. Then he added the twist from his body into the blow, as his right arm roared with all his power. A bolt of lightning punctuated that moment in time, burning the moment into our eyes. In that moment, Mion's stance hadn't changed at all. No, maybe she moved like lightning in the moment it struck. We had to recall the moment burned into our eyes to review the scene. Okanogi had swung with his right fist, which had enough power to shatter Mion's bones. So what if 100% of his power was directed back at him in a counterattack? When the lightning struck, Okanogi's body had been flying through the air. It was a legendary technique in Japanese martial arts, passed down in Judo and Aikido, the air throw. It looked as if one is being thrown without his opponent even touching him, a miraculous technique that occurs at lightning speed. Of all the techniques Mion possessed, it was the most sublime, advanced technique she could administer on the defeated general, Okanogi. The feeling of freedom while flying in the air is more memorable than the impact of hitting the ground. Supposedly. When Okanogi hit the ground behind Mion, a heavy rain suddenly began to fall. Choppa, choppa, choppa! And just as it did, a massive helicopter appeared from the other side of the mountain. The helicopter's rotor stirred up in the air and blew away the raindrops in a tornado. The rotor sounded much like a tornado, too. A rope uncoiled from the rear of the helicopter, and soldiers came sliding down it, one after another. The onlookers were stunned for a moment before realizing what they were seeing. It was the Bloodhounds. The Bloodhounds that Tomotaki had called in! Having realized how bad the situation had become, Okanogi returned to the other members of the Mountain Dogs. Nothing was going their way anymore. The Mountain Dogs ran down the slope and disappeared into the woods. They dragged Takano with them, who couldn't understand what was going on. A voice echoed from a speaker attached to another helicopter circling around the mountain.
本日1蓋302入江機関の全権限は凍結され、また同時刻上級司令部は入江機関全職員の武装解除を命じた。山犬中隊全隊員は直ちに武装解除し、入江診療所裏駐車場もしくは山頂資材置き場に集合せよ。これに応じない場合、国内法及び自衛隊法に基づき厳正に対処することをここに通告する。
Bloodhound members continued to slide down the rope from the helicopter. Even at a glance, they were very different from the Mountain Dogs. They were armed more heavily, and the guns they had were much larger. Such things clearly differentiated the two units.
これで私たちの勝ちですの？わかりませんのです。僕も初めてのことなので、勝ったのかわからないのです。
Satoko and Rika sat down and hugged each other. They were both soaked in rain, but they still sat down in the mud. Mion stood sullenly in the rain as the leader of the winning team. The Mountain Dogs had abandoned the field. They all ran away with their tails between their legs. Keiichi and Reina ran over to Mion.
Mion.
みーちゃん、終わったね。
Not yet. We still...
これで部活は終わりさ。
I'd say it's not over until we capture Takano and do something about her bosses as well.
リカちゃんも無事、みんなも無事。みーちゃん、 勝ち取れる最高の勝利を勝ち取ったんだよ。
ミオンがみんなを率いたんだ。ミオンのおかげの勝利さ。
But Mion didn't seem to be listening to Keiichi and Reina. Instead, she mumbled to herself.
私さ、部活の罰ゲームって好きなんだよね。
What do you have in mind?
部活ってさ、残酷だよね。仲間で戦い合ってさ。つまりそれはその子がビリだってみんなが見下すことなんだよね。
見下してなんかいねえだろ。楽しく罰ゲームをしてそれでおしまいさ。
そう、罰ゲームで楽しく遊んで敗戦の賞の責任をさ、楽しくみんなで笑って、それでチャラにできるから好きなんだよね。負けた本人も含めてみんなで笑って。
誰も傷つかない。みんなで楽しく笑っておしまいにできる。
おこのぎってやつは私に投げ飛ばされて叩きのめされなきゃ自分の罪がさ。そりゃさ、今日何度もヤバい目にあったよ。殺されそうに何度もなったよ。でもさ、もう終わりでしょ。
It ain't over until the fat lady sings, Mion.
ゲームセットなんだよ。なのに彼らにはチャラにする罰ゲームがないんだね。
Mion might have realized something when she threw Okanogi. Keiichi didn't think anybody else could understand that.
ミオンが何を言ってるのかわからねえよ。もう忘れろ。あいつらはもう終わりさ。
そうだね。これでもうすべて。
みんな生きてる。誰も怪我してない。今は最高のハッピーエンドを喜ぼうよ。
そうだな。誰もやられなかった。最高のハッピーエンドじゃねえか。
Is Shion's ear a joke to you guys? That certainly got hurt. While I hadn't yet confirmed Shion and Kasai's safety, they were correct. This was the happy ending they had all been fighting for. However, Mion was still thinking. She only understood the reason for that in the moment the thunder struck. But as soon as the flash of lightning disappeared, her understanding vanished as well. All she could remember was that she knows something very important, and that shortly after, she completely forgot about it. She could only feel a sense of great loss, a great sense of loss. Oh no, what happened? The bloodhounds soon surrounded the club members. At first, they thought the club members were their enemies. But when Tomitaki appeared, he explained the whole situation. The commander of the bloodhounds appeared to beg the club members not to say a word about anything, as it was a politically sensitive incident. It was amusing to see a man like that beg while carrying all those weapons. Of course, they had no intention of talking to anyone about it. Once it had ended, it all felt like a bad dream. If, on the following day, someone asked them what they had been doing, they might not even remember it. This day was that unrealistic for them. So even if they were asked, they wouldn't say a word.
リカちゃん、無事でよかった。
赤坂、無事でよかったのねさ。み
こっちも大成功だったよ。そっちもみんな無事かい？入江診療所はすでに彼らが制圧したそうだよ。山犬の隊員たちも続々と投降に応じてる。隠れていた入江先生ともう一人の少年も彼らに保護されたそうだよ。
監督も無事ですのね。よかったですわ。少年？はて、どなたでございましょうね。
Well, I'm sure you're gonna find out very, very soon.
富田さんか岡村さんあたりが巻き込まれて怪我でもしたのかしら。 さとこ、本当に良かったのです。
Rika's smile made clear on what she had gone through. Someone could only smile like that after a long and exhausting struggle. Satoko had no idea what that smile meant. How much time would be needed to make her understand? Still, Irie will do something about it. For certain, he will bring Satoko's Nini back home.
そうだ、さとこ。今日のお注射をしていないのではないですか？お注射をしないとダメなのです。あ、そうでしたわね。こんな時にも注射をやめちゃいけないなんて面倒な話ですこと。
Satoko seemed to have no idea that her medication was connected to the syndrome. Perhaps she was already aware, but pretended not to be. Rika vowed to herself that no matter how long it took, she was going to witness with her own eyes the moment her best friend finally parted with her tragic past.
このお注射も日に2回で助かりますわよね。以前の3回の時は本当に大変でしたわ。
Satoko also had no idea that Satoshi was involved in the development of her medication. Irie had said that Satoshi, as a specimen, had contributed much to Satoko's treatment. Even while asleep, Satoshi longed to ease the burden on Satoko. And those feelings must have influenced Satoko's medicine somehow. Satoko had to inject herself in the stomach. For privacy, she ran into the grove of trees to give herself a shot. There was no danger in her doing so. One after another, the bloodhounds dropped down from the helicopters. Each helicopter must have carried at least 20 to 30 soldiers. There was one helicopter at the top of the mountain, and 2 more halfway down the slope. Troops were pouring down from all of them, leading to the impression that the entire mountain was under the bloodhounds' control. Nobody fired their weapons even once. The mountain dogs had no choice but to surrender. It wasn't raining hard at all. The sky should clear up after 20 or 30 minutes. It was the volatile weather typical of early summer. Satoko soon returned and spoke to her best friend.
リコ、羽生さんの姿が見えませんわね。さっきまで一緒にいましたのに。
Don't you dare fucking tell me that someone snatched her while they were running.
羽生どこ？
It was stupid of me to think that Tokyo had sent more support. They were acting as if they'd known of their loss for a while now. I was the only one who didn't know.
どういうことなの？状況がさっぱりわからないわよ、おころぎ。
手詰まりってやつです。富武が呼んだ番犬が到着したんですよ。
番犬？名前は聞いたことあるけど。でも山犬と似たようなものでしょ？
Not even close.
どうして応戦しないのよ？
ご冗談は。山犬は所詮傍聴部隊です。対して番犬は本間門の戦闘部隊ですが、花から勝ち目なんざありませんね。
The remaining 3 members looked at me in exhaustion.
大体どうして番犬が来るのよ？
Aren't you listening? Your ex called them in.
富武は捕まえてるのにどうして？他にスパイがいるんじゃないの？それは誰よ？
さすでに診療所が襲撃され、富武2位が奪い返されたことはご存知ないのですか？
One of the 3 spoke up timidly, but Okinogi signaled him to shut up.
そんなの聞いてないわよ。それはいつよ？どうなってるの、おころぎ？ それに村から逃げられないよう封鎖部隊というのもいるんでしょ。
They aren't even responding to me anymore. I've been left behind. I'm the only one who didn't know. I'm being left out. The members looked at Okanogi, waiting for his command. Nobody's waiting for my order. Nobody even cares about my orders.
隊長、指揮者より無線です。
One of the members handed the intercom to Okanogi.
大鳥ワンダー、隊長、各校より最終連絡です。各校を実行せよ。各校了解した。
指揮者を番犬が包囲中です。投降を勧告しています。いかがしますか。
指揮者、いや、太田、足立、ご苦労だったな。投降を許可する。武装解除して以後は番犬の指示に従え。
指揮者了解。
各員その場で聞け。指揮者が制圧された。すでに診療所も制圧されているだろう。我々は全てのバックアップと装備を失った。全班は壊滅。個々の隊員たちも武装解除に応じているだろう。山犬の完全敗北だ。
まだよ。なんとか東京の野村さんに連絡を取るのよ。番犬が何よ。番犬に匹敵する部隊を送り込んでくれるわ。R は生きていたのよ。終末作戦の実行は可能だわ。それをすぐに野村さんに連絡しないと。そのためにはまず東京への連絡手段を取り返すことが重要よ。こうなると村の連絡網を遮断したのが裏目に出るわね。指揮者を奪還するしかないわ。指揮者の無線で東京に連絡して応援を呼ぶのよ。幸い指揮者は今あっさり降伏してみせたから奴らも油断してるはず。おこのぎと3人も隊員がいれば十分可能よ。まだ6月19日。作戦開始は21日。
You can't even get the dates right anymore, Takano. You're done. Finished.
22日だったかしら。まだ間に合う。まだまだ間に合う。ここから巻き返すわよ、おこのぎ。すぐに指揮者の奪還を実行しなさい。なんで誰も私の言うことを聞けないの。私は3歳よ。おこのぎよりずっと偉いのよ。おこのぎの言うことは聞けて、どうして私の言うことが聞けないの。
サンサー、さっきから飛び回ってるヘリが言う通りですわ。このゲームはうちらの負けです。これ以上の往生際の悪さは互いに得になりませんね。
何を言うの、おこのぎ。
He's saying you're done.
まだよ。もうくじけるの。あなたも R が生きているのを見たでしょ。今日の一日がおかしくなったのは R が死んだなんて噂が流れたからよ。でも R は生きていた。今日の一日はなかったことになるのよ。緊急マニュアルはまだ生きているわ。女王感染者が生きている以上、改めて殺せばそこから48時間の緊急マニュアル執行可能な時間が。
サンサー、緊急マニュアルがどうこうって次元じゃもうないんですよ。もう東京は女王感染者とか、それが死んだら48時間とか、終末作戦は完全に失敗しました。我々のクライアントはすでに証拠の隠滅に走り回っているでしょう。
Undoubtedly.
我々の役目ももうおしまいですが、山犬なんて面白い舞台を10年ほど指揮させてもらいました。貴重な経験ができましたが、それも今日でおしまいです。そしてサンサ、あんたの役割ももうおしまいです。
何よそれ。私の役割。何のことよ。
サンサ、あんたの役目はその手に持っておられるスクラップ帳を育て上げることでした。
何の話よ。
I didn't expect Okinogi to start talking about my grandfather's scrapbook.
ひなみ沢症候群って病気があることは疑いません。だが女王が死ぬと48時間で村中が大パニックになるってのは見た者がいません。本当か嘘かなんて分かりゃしないんですよ。
バカなこと言わないで。ほら書いてあるわよ。どこのページかしら。他の類似の脳内寄生重症の症例から類推して統計的にね。どこよこんな時に限って。
I flipped through the pages of the scrapbook in a panic. I can't even remember which page I'm looking for. Okinogi slapped the scrapbook aside, and it thudded. No, it landed in a muddy puddle, so it splashed onto the ground. You shouldn't have done that. Those are very important papers to the Major. The open pages of the scrapbook were face down in the muddy water, and already turning color as they soaked up the mud. As I crouched down to pick up the scrapbook, Okinogi stepped on it. Oh, here we go again. The splash of muddy water hit me in the face. I had to witness my precious scrapbook being stepped on and covered in filth.
サンサ、このスクラップに書いてあることが本当だろうとでっち上げだろうと真実だろうと虚偽だろうと実は
それはどういう意味よ。
I tried to get the scrapbook from under Okinogi's foot, but I couldn't pull it out.
東京のクライアントが期待してたのはそのスクラップ帳の中身をどれだけ本当か嘘かはどうでもいい。ただ信憑性さえありゃよかったんです。
本当か嘘かどうでもいい。
そうです。どっちでもいいんです。でっかい研究所で偉い先生方が研究してこれこういう結果ですっていう専門用語だらけの難しい資料を作ってくれて中身などろくにわからねえ連中を騙せるだけの信憑性ってやつをその
嘘なんかじゃないわ。私と祖父が何年にもわたって研究してきて足をどけなさいよ。
The scrapbook is getting soaked through. I'm trying my best so that it's not ruined, but it's no use.
女王が死んだら村は皆殺し。そういうとんでもない話をお偉方に納得させられりゃよかったんです。ひなみ沢症候群が脳みそに寄生してどうこうとか政治的アクションに使えるかどうかにしか興味がなかった。なことはあんただって十分承知していたでしょうが。そして今や誰もこんなインチキスクラップは信じやしません。このスクラップ帳に大勢がかけた。そして負けたんですわ。山犬もこのスクラップ帳に厚く張って負けた。それだけのことですね。
インチキスクラップなんかじゃない。これは真実なのよ。全部真実。おじいちゃんが調べて私が調べてそして書き上げてきた真実の研究結果なのよ。だってみんな信じてくれた。だからあんな立派な研究所を作ってくれたのよ。信じてくれたからみんなそう野村さんだってだからこそ私に声をかけてくれたのよ。
Nomura got in touch with you because you were a useful tool.
この研究の進化を分かってくれるクライアントはきっと他にだっているわ。だってこの研究は人類の未来の可能性。
Okinogi got fed up and kicked me. I didn't weigh much, so I fell backwards and became soaked in the muddy water. Okinogi walked over and looked down at me.
幸いなことに東京のクライアントもそしてうちらも。おい。
One of the mountain dogs handed a gun to Okanogi. Okanogi checked the cylinder and then threw it over to me.
何よこれ。
サンサ、そいつで自分の頭ぶち抜いてくれませんか。
I looked at the gun. I'm used to seeing guns, working at the Erie Institute as I do. I was never frightened by guns before. But for the first time, I feel scared just looking at one.
よくあるやつですわ。トカゲの尻尾ってやつです。サンサ、敗軍の将の責任ってやつで、そいつで自分の頭ぶち抜いてください。
そんな。
Nobody has ever told me to die before. Nobody has ever told me to kill myself.
クライアントもうちらもサンサが死んでくれりゃ、すでに東京はその準備に入ってますね。
バカなこと言わないで。そんなことできるわけ。
I'm starting to sob. My body is shaking all over.
まあ、無理ならいいんです。今のあんたにそこまで求めるのは酷でしょう。
Okanogi pulled his gun out and pointed it at me. The other members, having realized everything will work out if I die, just looked at me coldly.
投降を説得するも、堅くなに拒否し、抵抗。銃撃戦になり、やむなく射殺。そっちが本当の筋書きなんです。自殺用の銃は短くない時間、世話になったことへの俺なりの気遣いだったつもりです。
そんな筋書き嫌よ。そんなの誰が考えたのよ。嫌よ。
あんたがさっきから助けを求めたいって言っておられる東京の野村さんです。終末作戦が失敗した時に備え、野村さんの暗号名はカッコウ、そしてサンサの暗号名はヒナでしたね。カッコウが卵をどこに産むかご存知ですか。
そんな。
カッコウの卵はよその鳥の巣に産みつけられ、そこから帰ったカッコウはですね、もともとの巣のヒナを突き落として巣を乗っ取っちまうんだそうです。巣から落ちた飛べないヒナは地面でのたくり、まあ普通は野犬や山犬に食われて殺されちまうってことですわ。
I used the money I got from Uncle Koizumi to pay the mountain dogs, thinking I had gained a reliable ally. I always thought that, although Okanogi was barbaric, he was very reliable. But my nest had been taken over.
サンサ、あんたの味方なんていなかったんです。あんたは東京のクライアントが描いた絵の通り踊って緊急マニュアルってやつを煽ってくれりゃそれで十分だったんですよ。ですがその舞台も幕が降りて、あんたにステージから退場してもらおうってことになったってことですわ。そう、あんたの大好きなスクラップ長、そいつを左手に抱きながら右手で銃を拾ってください。
The scrapbook was finally returned to me, covered in mud. I held it with both hands and cried. joke the entire life of Mio Takano was. Right now is when I should just go back inside that chain link fence. My shaking hands held the ice-cold gun.
弾は一発ですから慎重に。頭蓋骨は案外弾を滑らすって話ですわ。口を開けてその中に撃つのがよくあるやり方です。ほら、銃を持って構えて、そして
Jesus. An absolutely miserable way to go. In the hills of the mountain, a single gunshot echoed. With that gunshot, members of the Bloodhounds rushed in. Okinoki and the other men raised their hands in surrender.
高野三佐も一緒でしたが、どうしても投降は嫌だと渋りましてね。今の発砲は三佐がこっちに銃を向けたんで撃った威嚇射撃です。
Intimidates. Wait, she's alive?
レトリバー7よりリーダーおこのぎ2と山犬隊員3名を逮捕。高野三佐はこのすぐ近くを逃走中の模様。足跡が南西方向へ消えているが物資が濃い。それ以上の追跡は不能。大至急応援を。高野三佐は武装している。繰り返す。高野三佐は武装している。
レトリバーリーダーよりオール。重要手配犯の高野三佐が現在逃走中。高野三佐は武装している模様。逃走地点を中心にパトローリングで封殺せよ。
I'm running through the mountain, covered in dirt, and still holding the muddy scrapbook. I keep falling because of the mud, and branches and tree roots continue to torment me. I lost one of my shoes, so I decided to get rid of the other shoe too. Where have I seen this before? This isn't the first time I've had to run like this. Also getting a deja vu moment I see on Takano. This isn't the first time I've ran barefoot. This isn't the first time I felt such pain on the soles of my feet. This isn't the first time I've cried like this.
繰り返す。高野さんさ、武装解除し投降せよ。逃げ場はない。山犬はすでに全員投降した。君に味方はいないぞ。
The helicopter above my head is calling out my name. I crawled into a hollow tree. I hid my knees and hid. The last time I ran barefoot like this was a very long time ago. My feet are bloody and swollen, and I can no longer walk. I can only cry as I bite the corner of my scrapbook. Sadness and humiliation fight for dominance in my heart. When I feel sad, I cry. And when I feel humiliated, I scratch myself to calm my anger. And I still have the gun in my right hand, the one with a single bullet in it. I have to kill myself. My death is the only thing that can bring it all to an end. Killing myself is the only way to go back to that day. But when I look at the scrapbook in my left hand, I'm assaulted by sadness and fear.
死にたくない。死にたくないよ。
Just die. Atone for your actions with your death. I recalled the look in Okinogi's eyes. I know I have committed sins. There are so many sins. Too many of them. There are more sins than I can possibly atone for. But do I have to die for them? I cried again, and then noticed someone standing nearby. You know, while the text box vanished for a few seconds and I got nothing but silence, for a second I thought the game glitched on me again. You're transparent again. Could somebody please explain to me how she keeps doing that? Switching back and forth between solid and non-solid? It's the girl. The girl whom I met when I came into Hinamizawa, when the Erie Institute was first opened. I met this girl at the shrine when I declared war on God. This girl is the god of this place. That god looked at me and sneered, rather than sympathizing.
それでもまだ人の身を捨て神の座を求めるというのか、人の子よ。随分久しぶりね。負けよ。このゲームは私の負けよ。人の身の分際で神に挑戦した哀れ人の子よ。まだ神の座を追い求めるのか。数々の試練をまだくぐり、それでもなお神の座を求めるのか。冗談じゃない。神の座なんてもう無理じゃない。人の子よ、聞け。今こそ神になる道を示そう。そなたの右手に持つ鉄の火で己が生に別れを告げるがいい。神の座で肉の器は不要。人にその姿を認められようなどと思ってはならぬ。神とは孤独な存在。それに好んでなりたがる愚かな人の子。それでもなお神の座を目指すというのか。これで私の頭を打ち抜けっていう。そんな簡単なことで、そんなにも簡単なことだったの？なら私は今まで何を積み上げてきた？大勢の人間の罪を背負って、その大勢の罪を今こそ己を生贄に捧げることでその勇気がたたえられ、神の座の末席を許すである。何をそれ、私にトカゲの尻尾を引き受けて全員の責任を押し付けられて死ねと、そういうの？ふざけない。そんなの嫌よ。絶対に嫌。何故に嫌か。常に人の世で和を求めるためには一つの汚れに一つの生贄がいる。それが人の世の断り、罪のみそぎの方法ではなかったのか。そなたの望む未来、一人の少女を生贄に求めたのはそれを理解していたからではなかったのか。
She's got you there.
わかんない話はやめて。私には何のことかさっぱりわからないわ。 それがわからぬなら所詮は人の神の座を求めた身の程知らずを食い
食いるわ。他の人の責任をかぶって死ぬのが神になる道なんて絶対嫌。そんな神様になりたくない。私は人間でよかった。ただただ人間として生きていいよって誰かに許してもらいたかった。生きてもいいよってそれなのになんでこんなことに。
ならばこの度の人の世の汚れをいかにして代価を払うのか。
なんでよ。なんで誰かが責任を取らされなくちゃならないのよ。誰もが相手を利用して情感を押し付け合って自分の手を汚さずに済むように立ち回りそれが人の世なの。違う。だってお父さんやお母さんやおじいちゃんと生きてきた日々にはそんなのなかったもん。
Well, unfortunately, that's because you didn't really see the whole world yet. If that makes any sense.
誰にもジョーカーなんか押し付けなかった。どうしてその世界から私はこぼれてしまったの。どうして私はこんな雨の山中を私はどうしてこれが私の罪に対する報いなの。分かってた。うっすらと気づいてた。何か大切なものを間違えて、でもそれを認めたくなくて取り返しがつかないところにまで来て初めて後悔した。自分の罪に対する報いなのね。
人の世はそなたに罪のみそぎを求めるだろう。この度の汚れはそなたを生贄に捧げることで払われよう。それが人の世の払い方なれど我は人にあらず人を超える存在にして欠けたる輪を埋める存在。人の罪を許す存在。人の罪は人には許せぬ。我こそは人のこの罪を許そう。
I forgive you. Demanding a sacrifice be paid for sins isn't the way of the human world. It's the way of demons. So this is not the world of man. This is a world of demons, created by man and the demons infesting them. Humans cannot end that way of their world. So I became a god to grant that end. It was over 1,000 years of pain. I wanted to come down from this place. I desired a world where God doesn't need to make peace. And finally, after 1,000 years' time, I found that fragment. Come, child of man. I will forgive you your sins in my name. Kneel and repent. Ask for forgiveness. Then you shall receive it. God will forgive you. God will forgive your human sins. The God in the form of a little girl walked up to me and reached out. As I knelt and looked down, she touched my head. I heard voices in the distance. And then, I saw a girl standing in front of me. She's one of Mion's club members, my most hated enemies. Shit, she's found me. The rain had already ceased. I decided to come out of the hollow tree. After the rain, it had grown so humid. I was starting to sweat all over. I'm soaked in sweat, mud, and rain. I feel filthy. I've been bitten by mosquitoes. My body is itching all over. This is why I hate the mountains.
声を上げてはダメよ。
I pointed the gun at her. The girl just looked at me calmly as if she didn't see it. At the very least, she did follow my order. What should I do? Should I take her as my hostage? Yeah, do that. See what good it does you. I only have one bullet. How long can I keep running for?
羽生どこだよ。参ったな。マジで迷子だぞあいつ。
あ、見つけましたわ。羽生さん。羽生、一体今までどこへ。
本当に最後の最後までついてないわね。いや、あるいはついてるのかしら。最後の最後で一矢報いることはできそうね。みんな銃よ。身動きしちゃダメよ。
Oh, you stupid fool.
これで状況は逆転ね。
くそ、なんてこと。
ミオンちゃん、他の誰かを撃たれたくなかったら一歩前に出なさい。
ダメだよ、みーちゃん。
Mion stepped forward quietly. She certainly has a lot of courage. No wonder she's their leader.
あなたのおかげで私はもうめちゃくちゃよ。
It is her greatest achievement.
私を殺そうとこの山中に怖いお兄さんたちが歩き回ってるわ。どうせ私は許されない。でもこのままではあまりに悔しいわ。だからね、せめてお返しをしてやりたいの。
偉そうに言ってるけど、その銃に弾が一発しかないのは知ってるぜ。
その通りよ。でもその一発でミオンちゃんが死んでしまうかもしれないとは考えない？
高野、ミーを撃つ気ですか？
誰も動いちゃダメよ。焦って撃ったら誰に当たるかわかんないんだから。
みんな私の後ろに隠れてて。
勇敢ね。誰かを撃たれるくらいなら自分が撃たれようという自己犠牲？
まあね、拳銃の一発でそうそう人間くたばるもんじゃない。当たりどころにもよるだろうけどさ。
驚くわ。なんて勇気なの。みんなに代わって私に撃たせようってこと。言っておくけど、銃声がすれば怖いお兄さんたちが殺到するだろうから、それを恐れて私が発砲しないなんてのは今の私にはないわよ。
じゃあ撃てばいいよ。ただしその一発を撃った後、私の仲間はあんたを八つ裂きにするよ。
の 望むところよ。人を呪わばなんとやら。おこのぎを屈服させるほどの名称と相打ちなら、それも悪くないわね。
うちなよ。その代わり絶対私に当てな。私以外の仲間に当ててみろ。あんたを死ぬより辛い目に遭わせてやる。
怖い。
This is just pathetic.
ダメだよみーちゃん。高野さんは本気。この人本当に撃つよ。なんとか時間を稼ぐんですのよ。そうすれば番犬の誰かがきっと。
もちろん。だから一矢報いる機会がなくならないうちにさっくり一発撃たせてもらうわ。さーてどこに当たるかしらね。下手くそだからどこに当たっても許してね。
みー、本気ですか？
みんな動くんじゃないよ。私は部長さ。みんなを背中に守れるならこんなに嬉しいことはないね。もし当たりどころが悪かった時はさ部活ロッカーの中に神棚を作って私を軍神と称えてよ。次期部長はケイちゃんね。みんなそん時は後をよろしく。
Mion is prepared to die. I'm already concerned. I won't accept any words of negotiation. Mion understands that. She doesn't want anyone else to be killed. That's why she chose to be a shield for her friends. That was an easy decision to make for her, because none of her friends would end up hurt. If she ends up getting injured, that'd be a stroke of luck, as far as she's concerned. Even if she doesn't make it, she thinks that's far better than seeing any of her friends die. And that's why Takano will shoot. Even though she understands Mion's noble intentions painfully well, it's too visceral for her to accept. So she'll shoot. I will pull the trigger. With all the absurdities of the human world riding on that bullet, I will shoot her!
あなたたち、よくゲームはするわよね。トランプのババ抜きはやる？
やらないね。うちはジジ抜きばっかだよ。
同じようなルールよ。人の世の罪はババ抜きと同じ。誰もが一枚のババを互いに押し付け合う。それは勝者を求めるゲームではなく、私はそのババを引いた。そのカードをもう渡す相手がいない。だからその腹いせにあなたを撃つの。不条理な人の世らしくね。
I'm preparing myself to shoot. There's no hesitation left in me. I will shoot her! I'm serious! Mion closed her eyes and opened her arms to try and shield her friends as much as she could. And that was when Hanyu stepped forward and placed herself in front of Mion.
羽生、危ないから下がって。
勇敢なるミオン。あなたの勇気はそれで十分です。人の世のババ抜きが必ず人に押し付けられなければならないものならば、それを引き受けるのが私の役目。羽生、あんた何を。私もこの世界はすごく楽しかったです。私も部活メンバーに加われてよかった。見ているだけじゃなく 加わる部活は本当に楽しかった。ありがとう。もう十分に楽しんだ。神の身には過ぎたくらいに幸せだった。
In that moment, Hanyu glared at me adamantly.
さあ撃て、人の子よ。人の世の押し付けずには済まぬ罪を放て。それを受け止めてやる。
分かったわ。分かったなら死ね。
The club members must have thought I was joking or bluffing. They didn't think that I would actually shoot. There was a noise like something exploding. In a world where time became as sticky as syrup, we saw it happen. The silver bullet hitting an invisible wall in front of Hanyu, as though the wall was protecting her. The bullet wanted to pierce Hanyu's chest, but it couldn't reach its goal. A bead of sweat formed on Hanyu's forehead. She had stopped the bullet with an invisible force. Permanently, or is this just temporary? The silver bullet was being pushed back. Takano was startled by this otherworldly phenomenon. But then she spoke one phrase. The silver bullet smashed through that invisible wall. There was no longer a wall at all. There was no wall to protect Hanyu from the bullet. Oh no. The bullet approached Hanyu's chest. Somebody let out a silent scream. Nobody could stop it. Nobody could stop that bullet. In that world of frozen time, nobody could stop the bullet that was stopped just inches in front of Hanyu's chest. Hanyu's friends had seen this scene before. The moment of checkmate. No matter how much they screamed, there was no way to avoid this tragedy. They knew that from their memories.
あなたは死ぬ。絶対死ぬ。好きなだけ走馬灯をご覧なさい。それが終わったら胸板をぶち抜かれて血をばらまいて、自分の血で溺れてのたうち回って死になさい。
その覚悟がなかったら僕はミオンの前になんか出ないのです。
Hanyu thought that this would take care of everything. Hanyu wasn't supposed to exist in the first place. She would leave the stage, and the rest of the cast would stay unharmed. This is how it's supposed to be. But in that moment, something happened to surprise even Hanyu. In the world of frozen time, in which nobody could move, Rika reached out and put her hand on the bullet that was stopped in midair. How could she move? Sheer willpower? Making a miracle happen? Even Hanyu couldn't move. Why could a mere human like Rika grab that bullet?
それを驚くのはおかしいわ。あんたと学んできたんじゃない。奇跡の起こし方。今日何度もすごいことが起こったけれど、本当の奇跡なんて何一つ起こしちゃいないわ。すべて
死んじゃえば怒って当然のことだった。だからこの最後の瞬間に本当の奇跡を使うわ。私お社様の生まれ変わりだしね。最後にこの程度の奇跡は使わせて。
Rika rubbed the frozen bullet gently, very gently, and then held it and embraced it lovingly, her hands at her chest. In that world where not even Hanyu could move.
高野も羽生も人の話を聞かないやつだってことも分かったわ。ミオンの話を聞いてた？私たちはババじじ抜きしかやらない。それを高野は同じようなゲームだと笑ったけど、全然違うゲームなのよ。
An old maid, a single joker, an unharmonized element is added to a full harmonized set of cards, and people try to foist it onto another. But in Old Bachelor, one card is removed from that harmonized world, and everyone foists the unharmonized fragments on each other. It's different than having a joker, because everything would be in harmony if there wasn't something missing. Players try to get rid of something in both games, but what they try to get rid of is very different.
じじ抜きも同じ。敗者の手元に1枚カードが残って終わる。それを高野が同じだと例えた気持ちはよくわかるわ。でもね、違うの。だってじじ抜きは
If the missing card was added back in, there would be no loser. Hanyu, the missing card in this world where someone has to foist their sins onto another, has joined the game. So this game has no losers. Except for Takano. Yet you're still trying to take one card away? What a waste of a miracle.
敗者なんかこの世界にいらない。これがフルでリカが奇跡を求めた1000年の旅の最後にたどり着いた答えよ。
The answer has always been there. It was there in the very first game of Mion's Club. There was always a loser because we were playing a game of cards with one missing. If we could fill it in for the missing card by believing each other and helping each other, then it would complete a full deck of 52 cards. A complete world without a loser. A complete world where no one is left out. Nobody has to stay out of the circle. Nobody has to cry or be burdened with sins. A world where everyone holds each other's hands and forgive each other's sins. When people live, there will be sin. What's important isn't to avoid sins, but to forgive them. A world can only become ugly and twisted when people try to stay pure. Let us accept our sins. Let us all forgive. That's the answer Rika Furude reached. A complete world. A world free from the sin of the human world, where one has to become a loser. Rika reached that as a human being. After an unbelievably long time, she finally reached it. Welcome home, Mother. The frozen time had begun to thaw. There was smoke coming from the muzzle of Takano's gun, so it was definitely fired. However, nobody got hit. Keiji looked around fearfully to make sure nobody was bleeding. They were all fine. Nobody had been shot.
外しやがった。
ざまあないね。
The tension lifted in Mion's body, and she began to sweat all over.
この私がこの距離で外すなんて。
All the club members thought the same thing. It was a miracle that the bullet didn't hit anyone. The club members had all felt the same way. They were all thinking, if it's going to hit someone, let it hit me. However, Rika Furuti wished for a miracle that was far beyond that. Rika wished for a miracle that was higher than self-sacrifice. She wished for a world where the bullet wouldn't hit anyone. She wished for a world where Takano wouldn't be hurt because she shot someone. Footsteps are rushing towards them. Takano tried to run, but she tripped over a root, and the scrapbook in her hand scattered everywhere. As she tried to gather up the papers, members of the Bloodhounds surrounded her. All the Bloodhounds pointed their guns her way, and some even poked her with them, but Takano still didn't stop gathering the papers. Some of the men stepped on the papers, and Takano tried to pull them out from under them. She tried to pull them out, begging them in tears not to step on her precious papers.
高野さんさ、あなたを逮捕します。
私が全部悪いことになるのよね。
The club members, feeling bad for her, looked at the ground.
立て、両手を後ろに回せ。こら、抵抗するな。いや、いやよいや。おじいちゃんのスクラップ持ってくの。いや。
Takano just wanted to pick up the pages of her scrapbook. But the Bloodhounds, thinking she was just resisting, pulled on her hair to try to make her stand up. Although this was her fate, it was too hard to watch her be treated that way. And then, a noble voice resounded among them.
Mate!
Hey there! Nice of you to show up. Radiating with divine light, a man appeared. They all knew this man very well, but they had never seen him look so determined.
調査部の富武2だ。彼女は調査部が保護する。
しかし富武に司令部から直ちに東京へ連行せよと命令を受けています。
君たちは彼女を見て気づかないのか。彼女の全身を見ろ。かきむしった後でいっぱいじゃないか。ひなみ沢症候群のかなり高いレベルの発症が疑われる。
There were lots of horrible scars on her wrists, arms, and neck. Takano had scratched herself throughout the day because of all the stress. There was no way for anyone to be certain those marks were symptoms of the syndrome. But when Tomitaki said that, it certainly sounded true.
しかし、サンサは入江機関で予防薬の投与を受けているはずです。発症するわけがありません。
君たちは資料をちゃんと読んでいるのか。予防薬は 100% の効果を保証するものではないと書いてあるぞ。十分読んでいれば彼女の状態が末期症状であるとわかるはずだ。調査部は彼女の尋問にあたり、ひなみ沢症候群の治療が最優先されると考える。そもそも今回の事件が彼女の意思に基づくものなのか、末期発症による妄想、錯乱によって引き起こされ、それを誰かが利用したのか。
You're just trying to save her.
慎重な判断がなくては全容解明は不可能であると考える。彼女の罪なのか、彼女の病んだ病の罪なのか、この場で断言するのは不可能だ。それを判断するためにも彼女には治療を受ける権利があり、義務がある。
次郎さん、
彼女を直ちに入江機関本部へ移送し、発症レベルの検査に入る。高野三佐の治療体制を準備させるよう入江二佐に連絡を。 ただし3佐については今後厳重に監視をつけ、全ての行動には制限が加えられるものとする。詳細は調査部長岡一佐から上級司令部を通して命令があるはずだ。
The Bloodhounds conveyed all this information over the radio. Nobody had any objections. Their job was to arrest her, after all. Any interrogations or investigations after that were the job of investigations. So if those were the orders from investigations, then that was that. Tomontaki walked over to the muddy figure of Takano. Takano buried her face in Tomotaki's chest and cried. Only Tomontaki and Takano knew the meaning of those tears.
遅くなったね。君を迎えに来たよ。君がそうだと思っているような悪い人じゃない。やり直そう。今度こそ君の本当の人生、田無美代子の人生をやり直すんだ。
できない。私、いっぱい罪にまみれた。やり直したりなんかしちゃいけない。死ななきゃいけない。じゃなきゃ私は自分の罪の重さで。
そうだね。君の罪はひょっとすると軽いものじゃないかもしれない。でも大丈夫。僕が一緒だから。だから一緒に償おう。高野美代の罪を償おう。そして僕と一緒に田無美代子を取り戻そう。その日まで僕は決して君のそばを離れない。
You're hitting me in the feels, you bastard.
生きてていいの？私は生きてていいの？みんながお前が死ねば丸く収まるって私に言うよ。それでも次郎さん、それでも私は
世界は君を許さないかもしれない。でもそれが何だってんだい。僕が君を許すよ。だから生きよう。死ぬことは罪の償いにはならない。生きて償い、世界に許しを請おう。そしてやり直すんだ。そうしたらきっと思い出せる。君が本当はどんな人で、どんな風な笑顔を浮かべていたかをね。
After a while, Takano was taken to the Yuri Institute in handcuffs. She was, however, handcuffed with her hands in front of her. She was holding the scrapbook. Tomontaki had cleaned the mud off of it. The downpour from the early afternoon had passed. The cicadas began singing again, reminding everything that this was a normal June in Hinamizawa. It was so hot, despite being June, and the sky was brilliantly clear. Someone asked someone else the time. She looked at her watch. It was 3 p.m. The Watanagashi festival would be starting at 5. It was almost time. Even from there, the Furude Shrine could be seen. There were red lanterns hanging all over. Once the sun went down, those lanterns would be lit. It was almost time for the Watanagashi Festival. And with that, everything would end. When the Higurashi cried, the game that stretched across different worlds had ended. And what the winner obtained after their victory is that the game ended without a loser. Hanyu was prepared to leave after the game was over, but she was still there. She was allowed to be there. In other words, she wasn't the card that was taken away. The card that was taken to play their game of Old Bachelor was no longer there. The breeze rustled Hanyu's sweaty, messed up hair. She was dumbfounded. Rika went over and stood next to her. She didn't need to say anything. She only smiled at Hanyu. That girl had pretended to be a bystander, but decided to step onto the stage. And then she thought that was enough, and tried to step off of it. With those memories of her bright time on stage, she tried to step off, but someone grabbed her sleeve and stopped her. She was told that she could stay. Then she realized she was still on the stage, and she didn't have to leave after all. There was a spot for her on the stage, and she was no longer a bystander. And that was an unbelievable miracle. She didn't even exist in the script. Nobody needed her to be there. But the miracle had allowed her to stay.
あれだけ苦労した旅だったのです。その程度の奇跡じゃちょっと足りない気もしますですよ。十分ですよ。こんな奇跡、僕の身には十分すぎて。
Rika smiled at Hanyu one more time and passed to her what was in her right hand. Hanyu felt something cold and hard. What was it? Hanyu slowly opened her hand and looked at it. It was the bullet Takano had fired. This was the proof of their miracle. It was the proof that Hanyu could exist there. It was the proof that they could be together, forever and ever.
もうすぐ暗くなってお祭りの時間になりますです。みんなで楽しくお祭りで部活なのです。もう脇で見てることなんかできませんです。きっと新人いじめの洗礼で罰ゲーム三昧でかわいそなのです。もう綿流しのお祭り見てるだけじゃないのですね。そうです。だってお祭りは見るものじゃなくて加わるものですよ。
As much as I want to continue going on, I need to cut things off here. But holy fucking shit. We actually won? There's nothing left to fear now? We don't have to worry about the Koizumi faction from Tokyo or anything like that? Throwing another wrench into things and just making things even more difficult for our poor selves? Hopefully I didn't just jinx things. But yeah, I mean, I didn't know for sure how exactly this was going to end, but I'm not gonna lie. I was expecting the whole village to get swept up in this whole affair before Takano was eventually brought down, but, well, guess that didn't need to happen, so good for everybody, I guess. I wonder though now. Next time we come back, will it end up being the last episode? At any rate, I hope you guys enjoyed this latest episode of Higurashi When You Cry Kai Chapter 8. If you did, and you want to see more content from me, feel free to subscribe to my channel. Now, assuming I'm not saying this prematurely, I hereby declare myself the victor of this long game between myself and the crazy lady. Anyway, take care, everybody.